In the meantime, we've got Florida Republican Congressman Mike Waltz, sits on the House Armed Services Committee, House Foreign Affairs Committee member as well. Congressman, obviously, when you have Israel calling out reservists and by the thousands, tens of thousands, it's getting ready for something, and something that could last a while. What do you think?
Yeah, Neil, let's be clear and let's make no mistake. This is an Iranian-backed, full-on assault and war against Israel. Israel is not just going to need to strike back. They are going to have to overwhelmingly eliminate Hamas's capability to do this again, and not just focus their retaliation on Hamas, because that's just the proxy for Iran. They are also going to have to hit back inside of Iran. The supreme leader of Iran has repeatedly and openly talked about surrounding Israel with a ring of fire, his words, of terrorists and of rockets to use at a time of his choosing, the supreme leader of Iran's choosing, to eliminate Israel. Now, a lot of people are asking why now. I do think this has a lot to do in terms of timing with the Saudi-Israel talks and using Hamas to spoil those talks, because they would build on the Abraham Accords and they would be transformative for the region. But this is an all-out war, Neil, and the United States needs to be very clear that we 100% have Israel's back. The statement that came out of the embassy, the U.S. embassy this morning, was despicable. That called on Israel to not respond. It's since been deleted, but I think that shows some of our bureaucrats' true colors.
You know, Congressman, Turkey apparently says it's ready to help de-escalate this situation, that it's in close contact with all the parties. It's coming from its foreign ministry. What do you think of that?
Look, we haven't even seen the other shoe drop yet. You know, to the north of Israel is Hezbollah, that has hundreds of thousands of more Iranian-purchased rockets. And what the goal here, Neil, is to overwhelm Israel's defenses with dumb rockets. Then they have GPS-guided missiles that can hit things like downtown Tel Aviv, government buildings, their nuclear power plant, the airport. Israel, and particularly under the leadership of Netanyahu, cannot continue to live with a gun to its head like this. And I think they're going to need to take down that capability, but I think they need to also they need to take down the head of the snake. And this administration's appeasement policy they're going to say that the $6 billion they just released was only for humanitarian aid, but we know the money is fungible. And we know that what that did was free up billions for Iran to use for its proxies. And it's no coincidence that this is happening just weeks after that transfer.
We don't know that for sure, but I do know this, and you're a great student of military history as well as a brave fighter in your own right. But I've seen this craziness in the Middle East dating back, as I said, to the Nixon administration when this Yom Kippur war was launched by Syria and Egypt. There have been different players since, but through Republican and Democratic administrations alike, it has been a hornet's nest. And I'm just wondering now, when I hear the Hamas leaders, Haniyeh, telling other Arab countries that Israel can't provide you with any protection, whether that is coming indirectly as a money line from Iran or what have you, that there is a sense that this powder keg continues, and there's nothing we can do about it. What do you think?
No, but Neil, no, I mean, respectfully, I disagree there. That's conflating two things. We are no longer in a state of the region where countries like Jordan or Egypt or others are invading, these Arab nations are invading Israel. That's why the Abraham Accords were so transformative to bring the Sunni Arab nations into alignment with Israel. The issue here is single-fold. It is a terrorist state and a terrorist backing regime in Iran that is using these proxies in what it views as a holy war to eliminate Israel. One can only imagine what the regime would do under a nuclear umbrella. And we have to call it like we see it. An appeasement strategy the last few years has only funded the regime to do what it's doing right now. And that is why we have to shift track. We have to change our policy and go back to maximum pressure, because the only thing the regime cares about is its own survival. That's why it's shooting schoolgirls in the street in Tehran and furthering its jihad against Israel and the West. And we can't indirectly fund that through an appeasement strategy.
Well, with all due respect, I don't know how we could say, Republicans are better at handling evil than Democrats are, or vice versa. I do know that the evil continues through all, and you're quite right. This is a different circumstance here. I am curious, though, where you think it goes, because there's an appetite right now where the appetite for foreign incursions in this country isn't what it was. I know the Ukraine situation is different, but a number of the candidates and those who rebelled against Kevin McCarthy shared a common concern that it was good money after bad when it came to Ukraine. Do you fear that same thinking will apply to Israel?
Well, and I want to be clear in your previous statement. I'm not saying that this is a partisan issue.
No,
I'm
I know
it's
you're
a
not.
matter
You're
of
not. I just
policy
wanted to be equally clear that I wanted to be equally clear that I was. But go ahead. I apologize.
But I mean, but there's just no denying that the Abraham Accords were transformative when it came to the Gulf Arab nations and the relationship with Israel, and that we were looking at historic peace accords just a few years ago. And now look at where we are here. And what I'm talking about is appeasement never works. And it certainly is not working with Iran. It's only emboldening Iran.
Does that apply, Congressman, to those who are concerned about the good money after bad thing I raised about Ukraine, that whether that, or do you fear it might extend to Israel, even if it's just financial support?
Well, I think there is a very different view of Israel as our key ally in the nation, and that is very well understood across the American populace and across our political sphere. What is less understood now, and I think people are rightly asking questions, is have we backed ourselves and dithered ourselves into a stalemate in Ukraine? How long is this going to go? What's it going to cost? What does victory look like in line with our interests? And Neil, that has not been explained by this president. To keep saying, if you don't rubber stamp a blank check over and over again, therefore you don't back democracy in Russia. I mean, there is a lot of middle ground there, whether it's European burden sharing, whether it's our energy policy. Europe's still buying Russian oil and gas. They're just doing it through India and Hong Kong. So there's a lot of, I think, valid questions about the lack of strategy from this White House, and therefore, where is all of this going with billions and billions and billions of dollars flowing out the door? Those are, I think, completely valid. That doesn't make you an isolationist, and that certainly doesn't make you pro-appeasement.
Hamas somehow pulled this off, right? And it's the fourth time it has done so since it essentially got this occupied area back in 2007, and that's with the blockade. But this one is raising a lot of eyebrows because, A, the sweeping nature of it, the effectiveness of it, and the total surprise of it. What do you make of all of that?
Well, I mean, right now, I think it is a time for Israel to defend itself and to hit back hard and to hit back at the head of the snake as well. However, Neil, we do need to unpack, and I'm sure the Israelis will, with our assistance. This was an intelligence failure. There's no other way to describe it. I don't know if somehow Hamas now has encrypted communications provided by Iran, if there was a failure of of Israel's human source network, but certainly for them to be able to develop this sophisticated of an attack right under Israel's nose and execute clearly with external support is something that that both Israel, with the help of the United States, will have to take a very hard look at.
Congressman, we will watch the fallout of all of the above.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.